Welcome. Happy Friday to everyone. This is Kat with Kat's Home Chat. I am the CEO and visionary of Tada by Kat, Next Level Staging and Design, where we create magic through visual connections, whether you're selling or dwelling. But I'm here today with my esteemed guest, Scott Frnka, and he's going to share with us. He is a broker, a realtor broker for many years now. And he just recently won an award that caught my attention. Scott and I go back 8-9 years. His company managed a property of a referral that I had given to him. And we were just chatting before the show about that. He really makes a difference. And this award that he won is Making a Difference Award. And Scott really has a servant's heart. And coupled with that, he's extremely knowledgeable in what we're going to talk about today, and that is in today's climate, whether you're buying or selling, there are many pieces to the puzzle without the anomaly of today's market. But more importantly, Scott's going to share with us what you need to know, whether you're a realtor, you're an investor, a flipper, a seller, a buyer, some of the key components that you need to be aware of when looking for an agent, when doing a transaction that could keep you out of trouble in more ways than one, and ensure that you're going to have a successful transaction. So without further ado, Scott Frnka from Frank Realty Group, KW Professionals. Scott, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Nice to see you. So let's just jump right in, if you don't mind, and share with folks what you're seeing today. And we know, it's changing constantly, like life, isn't it? But what are some of the hot things that you're seeing today as kind of, either pitfalls or, how we can prevent pitfalls in the buying or selling transactions? And I know that's a lot. If you want to break it down to buying and then selling, I'm good with that. I'm sure we will have listeners out there who are on, both either or of the transaction.
Sure. Well, let's start with purchasing a home. I think that's okay. Probably the best place to start.
Okay.
If you're in the buying market right now, I'm sure you're hearing horror stories about lack of listing inventory, demand being very high for homes, people coming in from other states with pockets full of cash, that they're just buying a home for straight up cash, and somebody who's an FHA buyer or a VA buyer or even a conventional buyer just doesn't stand a chance. That's not entirely,
and that's a rumor, right? That's not necessarily true.
That's not necessarily true. I can tell you that as a buyer, you're going to have to be somewhat prepared to be faced with a multiple offer situation on any home that you go under contract on. You probably are going to be up against cash buyers. You probably are going to be up against conventional buyers who have a significant amount of money to put down. You are going to be in a situation where you may have to be prepared to offer over list price. It has been a market for about the last year and a half, maybe, where we are seeing multiple offers on just about every listing.
So is that Scott slowing down? Is that slowing down somewhat on the multiple offer situation?
It depends on where you are, and it depends on the house, and it depends on
the price range.
I think. I am starting to see some homes sit out on the market a little bit longer than they had been. When you look at the days on market, it's just incredible to me that you're seeing numbers in the single digits, really kind of across the board. But as a buyer, you're going to have to go into this transaction prepared to not have a whole lot of room for negotiation, or at least that's what the case has been. And so what I mean by that is, you're either going to be offering at list. There's not going to be any low ball offers. The seller has been coached by their agent that even if the buyer runs an inspection on the property, they shouldn't be too prepared to give a whole lot from a repair concession, or be willing to do repairs for that matter. And as far as some of the traditional stuff that would be seller paid, as a buyer, you're going to have to be prepared to pay those. And what I mean is, traditionally the seller would pay title policy. As a buyer, you may have to be prepared to go in and say, okay, I'll pick up the title policy. I'll pay for a new survey. I'm going to do my inspection, but I'm only going to do my inspection.
Let me ask you this before we go further than that. Can you hear me? Okay. So would you recommend that if someone really wants the house, that within the offer, they offer that up front, or they wait and then offer it?
No, I would say write the contract saying, basically put your best foot forward from the get-go.
Okay.
Because if you're going to be in multiple offer situation, and you're not going to be the only offer, it's going to be, a review by the seller, and they're going to look for the best terms, and they're going to look for the best price. And if you're not putting that best foot forward from the very beginning, that seller is just going to discard that offer and say, well, I'm going to look at these others that are more advantageous to me.
Okay.
So, you just got to be prepared, or you've had to be prepared as a buyer to go in and be willing to do some things that were either previously negotiable items, or, not even given a second look by the seller and saying, okay, I'll pick that up. And to write a contract in today's market, asking for any kind of seller concession on closing costs, that's not going to be looked on favorably right now.
Not done. So let's go back to the statement that we made, or that you made, about cash isn't always king. Cash isn't always. So what are those anomalies? Because, folks, I think typically think that price is the only thing that you negotiate. Now, we know cash is powerful, so we're going to put a pin in that for a second. But, as you and I both know, there's multiple, I don't know, I'm sure somebody has counted them, areas of negotiation. Now, those have been minimized from a buyer standpoint because of the current market conditions, but there's still things that can be negotiated, soft things such as, a lease back, or, everybody's situation is different, how long the escrow is, things like that. So give us an example or two where cash is not necessarily going to win over a financed deal.
Well, I think there's probably a couple of things there. Cash buyers often tend to think that just because they're buying cash and time is money, and they can, with a cash buy, you can do a relatively quick close from contract to close. A lot of times it's 2 weeks or maybe even 10 days, because at that point, it's really just a matter of title and title issues being cleared up and things of that nature. So cash buyers often come in with the attitude of, well, I'm going to offer at list, or I'm going to offer below list, and that's going to win me the offer. But
Gotcha.
as a conventional buyer, or even FHA or VA, you have the advantage of going in and saying I'm going to offer full list price, or I'm going to offer over.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's punctuate that. So I think that's worth repeating, because I have heard this. Well, there's just so many cash buyers out there. And so that's a great point, Scott, that, when you're looking over a 30-year or even a 15-year financed at less than 3 or whatever the market is, 3.5%.
Oh no, it's going up. You're not going to get 3.5% now, unfortunately.
Was it 3.99?
No, it's over 4 now.
Oh, is it over 4? But still,
4.
I just go, ha ha ha, that's funny. My first house I paid 13% in 1988. So it's all relative. It's just crazy money. It's when you're financing it, it means this much, but to a cash buyer, it means a lot. They're giving out their cash. So finance buyers can win over cash buyers. That's the message I want to reiterate. Because many of the cash buyers come in and try to lowball these investors, flippers, etc. Hey, I got cash. I can close in 10 days. Well, guess what, guys? There's finance companies out there, and we'll be talking to some in these coming weeks, who can close in 10 days. Okay, so that's not always king. And I think that's a good.
And then I think the other thing that you've got to be prepared to do as a buyer is when you make that offer on that house, you've got to be, 100% dialed in on your financing with the lender. And if that listing agent calls your lender and says, hey, how does this file look? Are these good buyers? Are they strong? How quickly can you close? All that kind of stuff. Sometimes the best situation is already to get is to get yourself an underwriting, even though you may not be contracted on a property. So how
does that work?
Well, the lender can do like a pre-underwriting type of thing and get you all the way to that point. Instead of just verifying, income and assets and credit and all that kind of stuff.
But don't you don't have to have an address on that?
Well, you do, but you could get it all the way to the underwriting stage, and that lender could tell that listing agent, yeah, these people are ready to be underwritten. I've already checked them for income, assets. We've run credit. We've done all those kinds of things. They're 100%.
Yes, I've talked to escrow companies. Yeah, they can do a pre-escrow. I don't know that they can get it fully into underwriting without a specific address, but you're absolutely right. What they can do is get it into a pre-escrow and get all, all those things that you talked about done, where all they have to do is plug in the address and the exact address. So you've got a leg up. So that's a good point.
They can anticipate what an underwriter is going to want to see.
Right.
As far as conditions that may potentially need to be cleared. And as long as all those things are in line, that's going to put that buyer in position to close a lot faster than the typical 30-day contract to close.
Exactly.
You brought up an interesting point about leasebacks. I'm not seeing it as much now, but we were definitely seeing it last year, where a lease back, where you allowed the seller to stay in their home for 30 to 60 to 90 days at a nominal fee, sometimes could win you an offer, or sometimes could win you an offer over a cash offer as well.
Absolutely. And that's what I was making a point. There's other things that are important to that individual. It's not always straight cut. I want the I want the highest price.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's important that as a buyer, your agent gets on the phone with that listing agent before you even submit the offer and say, and have that conversation with the listing agent and say, okay, what's the seller looking for? What could potentially win us this house? Do they need a lease back? What's their situation? Have they got a home to move into?
I love that, Scott, and I think that's great encouragement for other agents, perhaps newer agents, or maybe seasoned agents that haven't thought to do that, is to be proactive and to call the other agent, even if it's in a multiple offer situation, to find out, you're not getting them to divulge what are the other offers, but tell me, tell me what your seller needs. Tell what's their motivating factors. What are some things, that just gives you the power. Information is power, right? That gives you the power to help craft the best offer that's going to win, the sale of that home. So I love that you say that, because I think, agents need to hear that. Buyers need to hear that, if that's not being proactive. And you also mentioned something which I think is extremely important, and that is for a good agent to not just take the word of the agent. I'm not saying agents, it's just like, agents aren't the lenders. Make sure you contact the lender and have that conversation with the lender to say, hey, we're getting ready, we've got other offers, we're getting ready to accept this offer. How does it look? Even once they've accepted, so you could either part ways before the option period or what have you, but to find out how strong they are. Because pre-approval, I think is what it's called now, they're going to check probably the debt to income ratio and the credit score, and that they're employed, maybe that. But there could be other mitigating factors. How much are they putting down? What is their specific situation? Just to make sure, what are some other things? Just to make sure that they're the strongest credit package that could be selected.
Well, if you're a listing agent, your fiduciary duty is to your seller. You're obligated to ask those questions. And as a listing agent, it's 100% your right to talk to that lender for the buyer to say, hey, I need to know about these buyers. What can you tell me? You don't have to give me personal information, but
right.
How strong are they? And are we really going to be able to close these, close this in 30 days or whatever it says on the contract?
Exactly. Because at that point, something may come up that, oh yeah, everything's really strong. They've got this and it's down. We just have to make sure we can get you and I talked about this, that we can get the funds from another foreign country out and liquidate and this and that, but we don't see a problem. Okay, that could be a potential flag up.
Yep.
Or something that you might want to address and get some further documentation from.
And plus, as the listing agent, if you're a seller, you're going to want to know what's going on once that contract goes into escrow. As a listing agent, you're setting the expectation with that lender that you want to be updated just as much as the buyer and the buyer's agent wants to be. Really good
Absolutely.
Lenders are going to provide at a minimum at least a weekly update, and they're going to update all parties to the transaction.
Yes. I think communication is key. You and I talked before the show. I started back in my real estate career back in California, and at the time, 25 something years ago, I had some really bad experiences with less than professional agents on the other side of a transaction. I was primarily doing listings, and I think communication is key. Whether you're a full-time agent or part-time agent, to communicate, set the proper expectations, and stay connected to your clients, whether buying or selling, to keep them updated. Let me ask you on the multiple, taking a little twist, but the same topic, multiple offer situation. Do you, in your opinion, do you think it's ever appropriate or a positive thing to have someone write a letter, hey, I'm a single mom with 2 kids, and grandma lives in the neighborhood, and we love the school district, anything like that? And so you're shaking your head no. So it used to be, in days gone by, that was appropriate. Why would it not be appropriate today?
Well, those are called love letters, and love letters have undergone a lot of scrutiny lately. And they are now considered a fair housing violation.
Really? Wow.
Yes. So that's what, my brokerage is very, very in tune with current laws, current, just overall compliance issues. And one of the things that, we have been told is that love letters should be avoided at all costs because they could be considered a fair housing violation.
I see.
And as much as we'd like to present our case, or a buyer would like to present their case to a seller, it is not something that is recommended. It's not something that I would do as a buyer's agent. It's just
Okay,
they've
so
just undergone a lot. They've undergone a lot of scrutiny, and
yeah, gotcha. Yeah, and that's what I've heard. That this was kind of the the feelings today is to omit the love letters, and I can see where those would be kind of looked at as above the straight offer. So let's talk about addendums. You and I talked briefly on the pre-call about some kind of do's and don'ts that agents might be doing, and this is to be aware for clients as well, sellers, buyers. What are some things that you're aware of that should not be on addendums, or that are done correctly or incorrectly on addendums, which is basically an add-on to a contract?
Well, yeah, it's attached to the contract.
Right.
So, mistakes that I see a lot of times, or I don't want to say violations, but just mistakes. One of them is the HOA addendum. You're going to hear differing opinions out there that the HOA addendum is a seller-initiated addendum. No, that's not what it is, because it's a negotiable piece of the contract. Anything that is a negotiable piece of the contract should be buyer-initiated, not seller-initiated. So oftentimes I see HOA addendums out on the documents that are in with the MLS listing, and the HOA addendum is included in it. I'm like, no, this is something that should be initiated with the buyer, or from the buyer. Notices and disclosures are absolutely seller-initiated forms. So the seller's disclosure, if the property's in a MUD district, if the property's in a public improvement district, those types of notices should absolutely be provided by the seller to the buyer. But addendums are negotiable or negotiable attachments to the contract, and those should be initiated by the buyer, not by the seller.
So does that also mean it would be paid by the buyer?
So, I mean, I think.
Okay.
Well, yes, on the HOA addendum, there's like 4 boxes, and so that's why, that as a listing agent, you've got to review all the parts of the contract, not just the price of the home, and not just when it closes, or not just what the option period is and what the option fee is going to be. You've got to evaluate all the different parts of that contract, and the addendums are a huge piece of that.
Okay, so that's what you're seeing as a kind of a glaring thing, is the addendums are kind of being skimmed over and not really looked at carefully like they should be.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if it's a good listing agent, they're going to review all that stuff, and they're going to come back and say, okay, what did you mean by this on this addendum? And they can flat out say, well, my seller isn't going to pay for that. But as a buyer or a seller, when you're interviewing agents to work for you, or considering hiring them, they absolutely have to be familiar with all the different moving parts of the contract.
Well, of course. And I know Keller Williams, they're big on education, and they have, a whole education team that, keeps them in compliance and knowledgeable of those kind of things. So we're going to wrap up this.
We've got a lot of different people in place to keep you out of
What's that, Scott?
I said, we've got a lot of different people in place to keep agents and buyers and sellers out of trouble.
Yes, and that's key. Yeah, especially with the fast-paced movement of of today and today's climate. So we've got about 5 minutes left, Scott. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well,
that you
I
haven't
mean, I
talked
think we
about?
covered, we could sit and talk for,
Oh, I know.
half a day about some of these
Exactly.
issues. Because, I think that, and I'm going to speak more in generalities here, because I know we've got, somewhat of a broad audience.
Right.
I think that if you are in the buying or selling market, I think that preparation is absolutely key. And I think that, the agent,
And I would
whomever you
absolutely
hire.
agree, which is why you need to call your realtor and then your staging professional. Because
Yes,
some
absolutely.
realtors are at the well, I'm just going to put it up and it's going to sell. Well, you owe it, again, fiduciary relationship with your client. You owe it to your client to milk every ounce of that equity out. And
Right.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again: buyers justify price with emotion, and staging, whether you use our company or another company or you do it yourself, creates emotion. We're seeing it over and over and over again, even in today's climate, where stuff has been on the market for months. We stage it, they get an offer. Last week, we had 2 last week that happened. So, you owe it to your client to not be lazy and just go, well, whatever, I'm going to make a ton of money.
Well, I think a key word that you just used is emotion.
Yep.
The home buying and selling process can be a very emotional experience for the buyer and seller.
Absolutely.
And I think that, bottom line is this: as agents, brokers, realtors, whatever you want to call us, our job is to get the transaction to the closing table. And because clients can be emotional, I think it's our job as their representatives is to be the professional and to be calm and be the voice of reason, and to not let our emotions take over. It's our way of earning a living, right? But we've still got to maintain our composure, and we've still got to work with whomever is on.
That's
We've got to work with
important. Yeah, that's so important.
We can't get emotional.
Is to not escalate. Your client gets upset. You need to be the problem solver. You need to be the puzzle master. Just I will help you, guide you through every piece of the puzzle. And that's so important. I'm glad you mentioned that, Scott. It's the real estate agent's professional job to keep them calm, because there are ups and downs, and its expectation is communication, letting them know, this is going to probably be a little emotional right here. This is what's coming next. I know we have an offer, but there's going to be negotiations. Don't take it personal. I'll navigate you through the whole thing, and keeping them calm, because it is very emotional. There are so many things that are going on in their head. Will I get the right amount of money? Am I going to be able to get a meeting check? Can I get off from work? Am I going to be able to pay the mortgage? There's just so many things. It's extremely emotional. Of course, with staging, we create those good emotions, not the negative ones.
Your clients are going to feed off of your attitude and your approach to the transaction.
Absolutely.
And if you're coming off as being very anxiety ridden or very stressed out, that's only going to serve to stress them out more.
Absolutely.
And
well, as I've often said, real estate is not for the faint of heart. And so if you are the faint of heart, maybe choose another industry. It's not for the faint of heart.
Correct.
So Scott, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to get more information on buying or selling, get some information from you and your real estate experience, what's the best way to reach you?
Probably just call me.
Okay.
281-543-7321. If I don't answer, I'll call you back probably in 30 minutes if I'm not otherwise tied up, but I try to make myself extremely accessible to my clients, probably to a fault.
And there's no fault
So,
to that, Scott. A real estate agent that answers their phone and or gets back within, a reasonable amount of time, to me, I don't even have to know their name. They're a successful realtor, because as we know, many do not.
right.
And that's, just the way it is. And your website, do you have a website that you like to point folks
Yeah,
to?
it's just www.frnka, Frnka, realtygroup.com.
Type this in here. Group.com. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott, for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with me and share with folks. And guys, if you're watching this and someone needs this information, share it with them. They'll appreciate you for doing that. And I'm going to be talking to Scott, either his wife, or if she's not available, Scott, we're going to have him here back again talking about property management, because that's a very successful company that Frank and his wife have been running and do a great job. And I know if you're an investor, a flipper, et cetera, and or you're going to have rental property, they're going to share with us some things that you need to know to navigate a successful business in that arena. So thanks again, Scott, and everybody out
The
there.
other thing I wanted to mention is we also have a Google business page. It's just Frnka Realty Group. You can look us up on there too. I mean, Google is today's yellow pages or white pages. And so,
yes, I'm just now getting connected. In fact, I'm going to send you something from Google. So just Google his group and that will come up as well. And you can get a hold of him there as well. Thanks again, Scott. Everybody out there, enjoy this beautiful weather if you're in Houston. I know Denver just had snow. That's crazy. But stay positive, stay hopeful, stay connected, and we thank you so much for connecting with us today. And we will see you next week. Have a super duper great weekend. Bye.